Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the After the Frame podcast. My name is Malik, and I am joined by.
Hi, my name is Matt.
And this week, I swear this wasn't planned, but for episode 4, we are reviewing Fantastic Four First Steps. Going into this movie, I was not extremely excited for it. I am suffering on a little bit of MCU fatigue. How are you feeling going into this movie? And did it live up to your expectations?
Going in, I was excited because this is Marvel Studios' first stab at the Fantastic Four. And it did live up to my expectations. There were a couple things that I had some gripes with as far as the film as a whole. But as far as expectations go, I was pleasantly surprised and met because all the other movies were not so fantastic.
Right. Yeah, there was not a particularly high bar for the other movies. I'm in the camp that the 2005 and 2007 ones, with like Chris Evans and Jessica Alba, I didn't hate them as much as it seems like everybody throughout the years has kind of turned on them. They were generally like fine. I know a lot of people had issues with Galactus being a cloud, which is obviously fixed in this version here in the MCU. But I think that, yeah, this Fantastic Four First Steps is easily the best Fantastic Four movie we've seen. Controversially, maybe, because it is a little divisive, similar to Superman. I've been seeing some people say that it's the best MCU movie ever. And then I've seen some people that are kind of like what I think, and I think also what you think, that, it was a good movie. It was nothing to the level of a Winter Soldier or an Infinity War or even a Civil War for me. It did its job introducing Marvel's first family. But other than that, I wasn't particularly moved by it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the only thing, so walking out of the Fantastic Four First Steps, the only thing that I could think was, man, like that was good, but not great. And that kind of stung because for the first time ever, we finally got a Fantastic Four movie that actually works. It's solid, but the whole time I just kept thinking, this could have been so much more. There's a ton of stuff that I liked. The casting is great. Everybody feels like they were born to play these characters. I was initially uncertain with the casting when it first was announced. Like, I didn't envision Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards. I know Joseph Quinn as the Human Torch was divisive with his Stranger Things appearance. Chrissy, wake up. But, the vibe of the movie is really cool too. It actually has its own look and personality instead of feeling like another cookie cutter Marvel film. And the score, the theme song, fantastic. Like they nailed that part. But the big problem is that it just flies by. It never slows down enough for you to really connect with anybody. You don't get that time to just sit with the characters or even care about the villains. It's like boom, moment, and it's over. There's also some shaky CGI here and there, but honestly, that's not the thing that bugged me. The thing that bugged me is that Marvel clearly had something good here, but they didn't give it a chance to be great. They rushed it. So yeah, I mean, First Steps is a win overall. Like, it's finally a fun Fantastic Four movie. But, I walked out wishing they had just taken their time. It's good, and that's it. It could have been so much more.
Yeah, I've actually done quite a bit of research after we saw the movie. And it appears that a lot was cut. I think the movie was originally going to be around 2 hours 30. And then in the end, after they finished editing everything out, we ended up with an hour 55. Obviously, a lot of people found out that the John Malkovich part in this movie was completely cut out. There was a bunch of stuff from the trailer. I don't want to say a bunch, but there are a few scenes even seen in the first trailer that weren't in the movie. I agree with what you're saying there. To touch on the CGI, I also felt the same way that, people are obviously going to have their opinions. Some people are going to think that this is, I've heard that this is the most visually stunning Marvel movie of all time. That I don't know about. It's very good. We didn't see it in IMAX, but it was very visually stunning in some aspects, but as you said, then there were others where the CGI was a little wonky. My favorite member of Fantastic Four was the Thing in this movie. I thought the CGI on him was fantastic. I just had a little bit of an issue with the CGI on Franklin Richards in some scenes. In some scenes, it kind of seemed he was CGI'd in, and then other scenes, it looked like they actually had a baby on set. So I don't know what was going on, if that was reshoots or what was going on with that. Galactus looked amazing. The scale of him in the scene that we'll get into of them visiting his ship was fantastic as well. And the Silver Surfer, I had my reservations about from seeing the teaser trailers and everything. I didn't think that she looked that great, but in the final film, she looked very good as well. So very, very visually great film. Don't know if it's the best that Marvel's ever done, though. That's just my opinion.
No, I agree with you. I think of the MCU movies, it's probably in the top half for me.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, that includes, I'm keeping in, the Spider-Man and Deadpool, like all the other things, Marvel, I guess. I enjoyed it more than Thunderbolts, ever so slightly. But it's not the best they've ever done, but I mean, it's a step in the right direction from where they have been these past couple of years.
I'm glad that you touched on that, because a big debate online is how does this movie compare to Thunderbolts and to Superman? After we saw it on Thursday night, I immediately, as always, I post on my story my few little tidbits and thoughts after seeing a movie, and immediately I had like 2 or 3 people swipe up, did you like it better than Superman? There were some things that I think this movie did better than Superman, but overall, yeah, I like Superman better. But it seems like, as I said online, it's very divisive. There's a camp that really thought Thunderbolts was better than this. There's people that think that this is better than Thunderbolts and Superman. So it all depends on what you're looking for, how much of a fan you are of the Fantastic Four, things of that nature.
I agree with you. I think Superman was better than this. Where are you at on the Thunderbolts Fantastic Four spectrum?
So, not to spoil my rating for this, I had Thunderbolts at 7.4, and then I had Superman at like an 8. This is like in the middle of the two. I'm not going to give my exact rating until the end, but this is like, as you said, I'd edge it out just above Thunderbolts, and then a step or two I enjoyed Superman just that little bit more. And as I said, like, this is coming from a guy who I think now the MCU is getting to the point where we're just kind of dragging it out. I know a lot of Marvel fans are still very invested and still excited for what they have coming next. I was a very big fan in the first 3 phases. I think that like after Endgame, I haven't really felt that same way. And this movie, nor Thunderbolts, has really made me feel that same way either. They're both good movies, but I can't sit here and tell you, oh, I'm just dying to watch Doomsday next year. I'm going to watch it, but I'm not clamoring for it like I did for the Avengers movies of the past. But we'll get into all of that talk at the end of it. I wanted to introduce this new portion of the podcast before we jump into the actual movie. I got some quotes from people that, straight out of the theater, their reactions. So I'm going to read 3 of them for you. The first one I have comes from Zachary Moses. He said, I think it was a good movie, but not great. There wasn't enough action for me. Way better than any of the other Fantastic Four movies, which I think like we're all on the same camp of that. I also felt like this movie didn't have a ton of action, just because the Fantastic Four versus Galactus, there's only so much they can do. Second quote comes from Luis Taxa. He says, this movie was really good. I have to say that this might be my favorite movie this year so far. I was in awe watching it. So obviously this is a case where he was very much blown away by this movie, the visuals, and obviously excited for what's coming up next. Last one I have comes from Ramon Nunez. He says, I rated the movie. The pacing was wonky because the emotional depth was added to the characters in the latter acts, but besides the CGI baby, I think it looked great, had a fantastic score, and I enjoyed it a lot. Definitely wish we would have had more time with them before catapulting them into Doomsday. The pace before they got back felt very much like Infinity War. So, yeah, I think I share a lot of these opinions. Definitely kind of more so the ones where I'm not too into the Fantastic Four just having this one movie and then whoosh, next Avengers. But obviously they've had to pivot because of the whole Jonathan Majors thing. But yeah, those were all the quotes I had from some people who saw the movie. Thank you to them for providing them. But yeah, so if you want to just jump right into the first scene here, or you have anything else you want to say?
No, we can roll in.
All right, so we have the opening scene that they established, that is Earth 828. We open up, very simple scene. It's almost like a cold open. And we just see at the Baxter building that Rhea and Sue are just talking, having a normal night. They just find out that Sue is pregnant, and they say that they've been trying to get pregnant for 2 years. And then from there, it just cuts into a big special presentation using the Ted Gilbert show and various news outlets to kind of bring the audience into what's been going on with the Fantastic Four, because again, this is not an origin story. They say that they're celebrating 4 years of the Fantastic Four. And this is one of the portions that I thought that this movie handled a lot better than Superman. Because one of the things I didn't like about Superman is that because it was an established universe, there were a few clunky lines of dialogue, whereas this seemed like a very natural progression for this group of heroes. They show all these different things that they've done over the past 4 years, show some of the villains they've fought. They have Sue Storm. She's like the leader of this thing called the Future Foundation. It's similar like the UN, and they've come to an agreement like world peace almost amongst everybody, all the nations of the world. We see a little, not really a cameo, but we see a call out of Latveria, and they're in like a United Nations type thing, and nobody is seated for Latveria representing them, which is interesting. We see that Reed Richards has a lot of guilt for the accident that happens to them in space that gives them the powers. They have a run in with a guy named Mole Man. And at this point, I was so shocked at how much the Incredibles took from the Fantastic Four, because I immediately just thought of the Underminer when I saw him. And Sue is the only one of the Fantastic Four that the Mole Man has respect for, so they have a good rapport going on. And yeah, the whole world loves the Fantastic Four. They're treated as like this royalty, rock star type thing, and that's kind of how the film just starts out, just bringing us into the universe.
Yeah, I mean, it kicking off in the 60s on this alternate Earth, we see Reed, Sue, Ben, and Johnny as astronauts. They head into space, get hit with cosmic rays, and boom, that's how we get the Fantastic Four. They don't waste a lot of time on that part, which I actually appreciated. We all know the origin by now. And then, yeah, you fast forward a few years and these four are basically rock stars. As you said, everyone loves them.
I like that all four of them are astronauts. In this universe is that they establish that all four of them are smart. Not all of them are obviously Reed Richards smart, but they all have like engineering degrees. So I kind of like that Johnny Storm was not just an idiot in this movie or anything like that. He still keeps with the character a little bit, being a little bit more playful and goofy, but he's not stupid by any stretch of the imagination, where I felt Chris Evans' portrayal in that movie was a little bit more kind of like dumb jock. From that point, we cut to the Fantastic Four. They're enjoying Sunday dinner, which they established they do every Sunday, 7 p.m. Johnny and Ben are getting everything prepared. You see this part in the trailer already. Sue and Reed are late to Sunday dinner, and when they come in, the thing immediately figures out that Sue is pregnant. They're all happy. They're celebrating a little bit. And then in this scene, they just jump straight to another montage of now the world reacting to Sue and Reed having this baby. They start baby proofing everything in the Baxter building. Then we get a scene where Reed is working in a lab. They're getting these transmissions from space that he's trying to decode. Johnny comes in asking for new spacesuits because the old ones he didn't like as much. From there, we also see that Reed is working on like a teleportation device, a bridge. He uses an egg as the test. The egg goes from one end of the lab to the other, but it cuts all the power. And then he sends Johnny off to fix the breaker. And Johnny takes the transmission and he takes it to his room to try and listen to it and figure out what's going on.
You get this really sweet dinner scene where Reed and Sue tell the others they're expecting a baby, which is such a calm, human moment before we come to find out that everything hits the fan. And on a funny aside, the thing, this is our first instance of that's fantastic. And they're cooking dinner and everything. And it reminded me so much of The Bear, which is pull, Cousin Richie. And I thought that was a neat kind of callback to his previous work, but also it was just fantastic.
Again, I really have to say that the CGI they did on Ben Grimm, I don't know if it was partly practical, but the Thing really looked good in this movie. I think the Thing, Galactus, Silver Surfer were the three standout CGI things in this movie. In the next scene, we have Sue and Reed. They meet in the lab. Reed is checking on the baby and everything, doing some tests to see, in fact, if this baby is going to come out with any anomalies, since, its two parents have cosmic powers. We see that Sue is not too impressed that Reed is just having Herbie just, fix everything, like fixing the cribs and everything like that. And Sue uses her powers in a cool way in this scene. She uses her invisibility, like she touches her stomach and it's almost like an ultrasound. You just see the baby like very safely in the womb, which I thought was a very cool way to use her abilities there. We find out that it's now Halloween. This period of time within these scenes, like time is passing relatively quickly because you see Sue's stomach growing in size. But yeah, we see it's Halloween now, and Ben is getting some cookies from his old neighborhood that he used to live in when he was a kid. We see that he has like this good rapport with the local kids. He's like lifting up a car and like entertaining them, everything. He speaks to a girl named Rachel. Seems like he likes her, but they don't really give a lot of time to this relationship. I'm wondering if that's one of the scenes that got cut. But I believe she's the in the comics and also in the previous movies. I believe she's the one that's blind. Am I correct on that one, or do you not know about that?
That's a good question. I actually didn't do a ton of digging into that. I didn't catch her name. Her
I just caught her name is yeah, it's Rachel, and it's played by Natasha Lyonne. That's all I know about her. But yeah,
looking at oh, there's like nothing on the internet about her character.
mm,
Oh,
might have
that's
been cut.
why it's an original character created for the film. So
So it's not going to be the same girl. That's because I know that they obviously have this blind girl who ends up being with Ben because she can't see how he looks. There's a whole line of stuff. So.
there's no rock slide or anything coming.
Yeah, the joke from that movie.
Yeah, just doing a quick Google search. Yeah, Rachel Rosman is an original character created for the film. Yeah, she's just a school teacher.
Okay, sounds good. They don't give him the same arc in this one as they did in the previous ones because before it was a lot more of everybody else has these powers, and then he's obviously like a big rock character and everything, so it's kind of like he's a bit of a monster. Some people treat him like that, but everybody treats him the same on this planet. Like everybody loves him just as much as they love all the other Fantastic Four, so you don't really feel that sense of he's dreading it as much. Maybe it was cut.
Yeah, I think they did a good job portraying his design, but also his appearance to other people, and people didn't really read too much into that. But in this one, he actually looks like rocks, and not in Fan Four Stick where he looks like Popeye's fried chicken. Like they actually made him look, worthwhile.
I'm gonna tell you right now, I've never seen that movie, and from what I hear, it has
Don't
nothing
watch
good
it.
to see. So I'm never watching it. Yep,
Do
that's
not watch
literally
it.
all I've heard. It's just like the Fast and Furious ride at Universal. I've never been on it because I've not heard one good thing about it. It's the same thing. But yeah, we cut back again to the Fantastic Four at the Baxter Building, and they're again preparing for another Sunday dinner. Reed Richards goes outside. They hear some police sirens and everything like that. They kind of notice that Reed has been baby-proofing the world, as Ben puts it. He mentions some of the villains from the comics. He says, the Puppet Master, Diablo, the Wizard, and that he's been monitoring them. And then he kind of has like these flying cars like going around, like making sure that everything is all good. I thought this was very similar. I don't know if you caught on to this. I thought this was similar to kind of what Tony Stark was trying to pull in Ultron, where his whole thing is that he just wanted a suit of armor around the world. And obviously he's the big genius for Earth 616. We got Reed Richards, the big genius for Earth 828. I'm wondering if, with Robert Downey Jr. playing Doom in the next movie, if they're going to play on that type of thing. The tortured, intelligent person having too much knowledge can be a curse type of thing. So I thought that was pretty interesting that he said that. But really, no, not too much time for them to delve into that, because the Fantastic Four get danger alerts on their watches. They see the Silver Surfer appear from the sky. The whole world is watching. They send Johnny over to see what's going on. They follow in the Fantastic Car, fly over. She has her whole speech basically saying that she is the herald to Galactus and that their planet is marked for death. Everybody is just confused, like trying to find out what's going on. She flies back off after she warns them to, hold your loved ones close, say what you need to say before your final days. Johnny goes after her into space. She talks to him in her language and then pushes him off. He falls back down to Earth and she flies off.
Having the Silver Surfer show up, she just drops this huge bomb that Galactus is coming to eat Earth. Those first scenes with her are awesome visually, by the way. The movie looks really good. And yeah, you made a great point earlier about her CGI, because I kind of understand with the trailers, like it didn't look like how the Silver Surfer should have. And then, you get to the final product and it's literally just entirely metallic silver. But I thought that was a really strong introduction for her character.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this also, with the way that they did the sound mixing in this scene, I can imagine in IMAX it must have sounded so much better. But just her announcing everything, like as I said, she had this whole speech basically, talking about like, I herald his beginning, I herald your end, and everything like that. The way that her voice just echoed through it just sounded like everybody on Earth had stopped what they were doing and just listening to her. And I thought that that was a really cool aspect to the scene as well. This is a part now that I'm going to defer to you and ask. Due to the fact that the Fantastic Four are known to be the only heroes on this planet, I thought it was rather convenient that the Herald ends up in New York, just where they are, seeing as how she has to announce that the whole world is going to be destroyed, not just New York. Is that kind of how it is in the comics? Do they usually just show up wherever the Fantastic Four are without explanation as to how they know where they are?
Well, in the comics, largely the majority of Marvel events are in New York because, unlike kind of how the MCU has people scattered throughout, in the comics, everybody's in New York, and that's it. You've got the Avengers, you got Spider-Man, you got the Baxter Building, you've got the X-Men. Everybody is all in New York. In the comics, it's kind of retrospective that yes, in that context, they would just show up. So I get where you're coming from about, this alternate Earth, and of all the places to show up, it's specifically where they are. It's just kind of the fallacy of where things in the comics have gone in the past, because yeah, it's always been centrally located in the comics.
That makes sense. But yeah, overall, I thought that her introduction was very good anyway. So obviously, this news is very jarring. As you said, it's a complete bombshell on everybody because the Fantastic Four are the only people that can do anything. The world looks to them. They head back to the Baxter Building and they start trying to track where she's been. Reed Richards figures out that all these planets have been disappearing or basically being destroyed, and they trace her energy signature to all of these planets, and everyone that she's visited has been destroyed. Johnny tells everybody that she spoke to him. He doesn't know what the language is, so the group kind of just like brush it off, just be like, that's just Johnny being Johnny. He later makes a correlation between the transmissions they've been getting earlier on in the movie and this language that'll come into a plot point later. So yeah, immediately Reed Richards is like, well, we're just gonna have to go up and see Galactus before he comes here. So they kind of just start preparing to go off into space on their ship, the Excelsior. Another montage, short montage type thing. This movie has quite a bit of it just so time can go quicker. They just prepare to go to space. Ben and Reed have like a little conversation about him still feeling guilty for making Ben the way he is, but Ben tells him don't worry about it. Yeah, on the Excelsior, the group take off to find Galactus. It takes them like I think a day or something to prepare everything. Up in space, they attach to this device that I guess helps them like jump through time and space. It very much reminded me of scenes from Star Wars. I immediately thought, and I don't know if you thought this in the movie, so at this point, Sue has to be like maybe you'd say 6-7 months pregnant. Why did she go with them on this mission? Like, I don't know why. I thought it was very odd that Sue would want to go. Did you feel that way as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's mainly, I think it's mainly due to the circumstance of the team dynamic, like one for all and all for one type thing. No matter what, because I think you can wonder, like, if, say, Ben, Reed, and Johnny just went to see Galactus while Sue was just chilling at home, twiddling her thumbs, what the outcome of that would have been. And knowing where the events of the movie go unfold, it makes me wonder what could have happened in that scene had it just been the three of them. Yeah, I think it's just since they have the dynamic of the family's got to make the road trip, and the team, they decide they're going to try to talk to Galactus, which takes them way out to this other system. I think it's just the family dynamic.
Okay. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, we find out that, our boy Franklin is very pivotal in the plot. The Fantastic Four come up on a planet that is mid-destruction. Obviously, Galactus is doing all of this. They see that it's kind of like not how, I guess in the comics, he literally just is so giant that he eats the planet. In this, he kind of has this very big ship that does the destruction, and it takes like the matter from the planet, and then he feeds on that, which I thought was pretty cool. And then yeah, they use Sue's powers to make the whole ship invisible, so they can kind of sneak in and see what's going on. But that doesn't work because Galactus starts scanning them. They get caught in a tractor beam, you could say. Their ship is beginning to get pulled towards his ship, and Galactus scans the whole ship, scans every single person there, and you see him linger on Sue Storm's stomach. And then the next thing we see is the surfer coming up to them and saying Galactus wants to see you. So she has them come into his ship. She explains, like, while this is going on, they find out that she's the one that picks the planets for him to consume. Johnny is trying to also find out what she said to him. She explains that what she said is die with your own. It's like a blessing from her language, from her planet. But yeah, this whole scene I think was my favorite. Couple of scenes in the movie, because as I said, I think that this is where the movie's visuals really kick in really nice. From when they get onto Galactus's ship, we also see Galactus kind of sitting in his giant throne. The scale that they made Galactus was incredible. Really got this sense of this impending doom, like no pun intended, hovering over all of them. And they all look like ants compared to him.
Yeah, I think in this scene and even the build up to it, where they go and they literally watch a planet get devoured right in front of them. Galactus at his scale, you're kind of just like, well, holy shit, like this dude's massive. Like what are we going to do? We're four little humans. Like what can we do against this? Cuz in the comics Galactus, which I understand why they made the pivot to him having a ship that essentially degrades the planet into this matter that gives him energy to function and all that. I understand why they made that switch, but in the comics, he, and I think I mentioned it to you in the film too, he can manipulate his size to really kind of scale, because essentially he is a just being in space. He doesn't have a ship. I would have preferred to just see him, just grab a planet with his two big hands and just, but I understand why they made the transition. It's not as realistic or practical with the MCU, but his design, his voice, his introduction, I thought was really well done. And I mean, it's whole hell of a lot better than making him a cloud.
Yeah, for sure. Galactus in this scene, he says that he's from billions of years ago on another world. He used to be small like them. They don't get into really his backstory of how he got to this point of being giant or why he has this insatiable hunger. He makes it sound like he's cursed with this internal hunger, which I thought was a very interesting thing. So this is where I was talking about. I think that they could have written Galactus's character a little bit different than they did, because in this scene he sets up that he has this eternal hunger, and it seems like it's like a prison to him. Like he doesn't really want to be doing this, but like he has no choice in the matter. I think that they could have written him as a more sympathetic villain, where he doesn't want to destroy Earth or doesn't want Franklin, we come to find out, but it's like he feels like he has to so he can be free. But the film doesn't really go that route. They kind of just have him being like this evil god that's like, I'm just gonna eat your world if you don't give me what I want type of thing. So I just think it would have made him a little bit more interesting, in my opinion. But anyway, yeah, he says basically that the boy that's in Sue's stomach, we're going to find out to be Franklin Richards. He has this thing called the power cosmic, which is also what Galactus has. And Galactus wants the kid so that the kid can take over for him, and then he doesn't have to be so hungry anymore. Basically, just take over for Galactus, and he can go around eating planets and doing whatever. And obviously, Sue and Reed are like, well, no, you're not going to have our son. And he says, well, how about I take your son, and in return, I don't, eat your planet. And then they still say, nope, we're not going to give you our son, and we're not going to give you our planet either. So Galactus starts getting up from his throne and says, well, I'm going to eat your planet slowly while your son watches, basically saying one way or another, like, I'm going to get your son, and it's up to you whether or not your planet lives or dies. A Fantastic Four here fight off the Silver Surfer and fight off Galactus a little bit, running back to their ship. Galactus here, I don't know if it was just because they have a connection power with the power cosmic, but he basically induces labor in Sue Storm. He kind of like uses his like scanning thing, looks at her stomach, and then all of a sudden she goes into labor. So I guess maybe he has that kind of connection with Franklin. But yeah, while she's in labor, Reed's having to help her onto the ship. They're like barely getting onto the ship. The Silver Surfer is chasing them and everything. This scene is also very cool. I think this whole sequence that's in space was very well done. They're kind of going through a wormhole to try and avoid the Silver Surfer. They decide that they're going to go towards a black hole. They're going to trick her basically into getting too close to the black hole, and then she's going to get sucked in. So they use, while Sue is literally going through her contractions and everything that's going on, she makes the ship invisible, so that way the Silver Surfer is tricked. She falls into a black hole. They don't have enough fuel to get home, so Ben has to slingshot them around the star. As he's doing that, basically Reed is holding Sue down because of the gravity. Obviously, they're in space, so they're floating a bit. And yeah, she gives birth to Franklin Richards right there on the ship as they're heading back home. They get back home safe and sound. They have the baby, and the public is waiting for them.
Yeah, I think this scene and the preceding scene, like it really kind of builds up the tension of this film. Galactus captures them and straight up says, I'll spare Earth if you give me your unborn kid, because he senses there's insane power in that child. And it's so stressful that Sue literally goes into labor. And then, they manage to escape using the black hole and make it back home. Sue has the baby, which we come to find out is named Franklin. So Franklin, from my understanding, I believe Sue, Storm, I don't recall. I'm looking now. Sue and Johnny, I think their father was Franklin as well. I think. I'm looking now to see if that's the case. Yeah, Dr. Franklin Storm is their father's name. So I thought that was a neat touch.
I didn't know that.
And then, so his full name from the comics, his full name is Franklin Benjamin Richards, where the Benjamin comes from Ben Grimm, the Thing. So
Okay.
I thought that was a scene and segue into, the birth of Franklin. And yeah, they get back to Earth, and then they hold a press conference that just completely blows up in their faces.
Yeah, they, as if it wasn't stressful enough, them being told that they have to basically give away their son or Earth is doomed. They get back onto Earth immediately, like you'd think, like, oh, they need to rush to a hospital. They need to do some tests on this baby that was just born on the ship. But they don't have any time for that because the public is just so ready to talk to them and find out what's going on. And before they left to go to see Galactus, they had like a short press conference as well where Reed promises that they will protect them, just to drum up hope in everyone. This one is very different. Obviously, we find out that they've been gone a month, which I thought was very interesting. Their whole time and space was a month on Earth. Reed obviously says that they don't have anything prepared, like a statement, and everybody is already just assumed that their great Fantastic Four, the protectors of their Earth, have beaten Galactus. So, an interviewer says, well, how'd you beat him? And they all kind of look at each other a little nervous, and they say, we haven't beaten him, at least not yet. So this starts to worry everybody a little bit. But then Reed Richards tells them that, we went up there and we aimed to negotiate with him, but the price he was asking for was obviously too high. The public asked, well, what was the price? Reed says that he asked for our son, but we obviously said no. So then at this point now in the movie, the public starts to turn on the Fantastic Four because in their eyes, they're all about to die. And they see it as, well, they could just give up this kid and then everything would be solved. So I really like this plot point in the movie because it poses a very interesting dilemma for our heroes that, obviously when you think about it, it is one life worth more than the whole entire planet, which is, obviously the Earth side of things. But then because we're the audience kind of so interconnected with the Fantastic Four, seeing them and their whole connectivity as a family, you also, as a parent, wouldn't want to give away your child for anything. So it is an interesting dilemma that I really like that they brought up.
Yeah, I thought it was a good dynamic. Obviously they weren't prepared for the press conference and it just completely blows up in their face. And yeah, like you mentioned, the public turns on them. And then jumping ahead a little bit, I liked how, eventually the public congregate outside the Baxter building, just like in protest of the Fantastic Four, because they're the only people in that area that are protecting them. So, obviously the public's unhappy because, like you mentioned, one life in exchange for all other lives. But I thought the scene following that, where Sue is standing there with the baby and essentially promising that they'll protect everyone no matter what, and that, finally winning people back over, was really well done. Because I mean, that's a good speech and a good segue to say, hey, obviously we're not going to give up our son, but if it was anybody else in that shoes, like, would you do that? And the answer is probably not. So I thought it was a good way to kind of bring back the public investment and relation to these characters. And, we see it continue to build in the further events of the film.
Yeah, I 100% agree. We have like a very small scene where the Silver Surfer easily, I guess, escaped the black hole and just, goes back to Galactus's ship. They have a very small exchange where she's just basically like apologizing that they didn't get the baby. And Galactus just really hammers home the point, like, I need that kid. Like, I'm done being Galactus now. Get me the kid or else. And we kind of begin to see the Silver Surfer's soft side, say that 5 times fast, where she is saying, he's just a kid, like he's just a baby. So you're seeing that the Silver Surfer is a little bit, trepidatious, you could say, which I thought was pretty interesting.
It's funny you mentioned it's just a kid. I know we've anytime I hear that statement, I know you're probably not as too familiar with him as I am, but I get this image of Soups, the famous social media guy who's big into the MCU and everything. He did. You never watched Invincible, right? On
Not all
Prime.
of it, no.
Okay, so season 3, like there's a pretty pivotal event in the finale, and there is a viral TikTok where, and he still gets clowned for it, but he's reacting to the clip, and he's just so invested and emotional. But he's like, bro, it's just a kid, and everybody clowns him for it. So anytime I hear it's just a kid, like that just flashbangs in my mind. And I know you and I have talked about his reaction to Superman, and his reaction to the Fantastic Four was pretty good too.
Yeah, he's a very demonstrative guy, shall we say. I've definitely seen some of his stuff, but maybe one day we can have him on the podcast or something if things go our way. But yeah, I think that the Silver Surfer showing her care at least a little bit, or a little bit of concern, was an interesting point that I would have preferred. In this scene, we had Galactus kind of say, I don't want to be doing this, but I don't see another way out for me. Like, this kid is my only opportunity. Because imagine him as a character living for, he says, millions of years, and he's been like cursed with this. But now he finally sees an opportunity out. That I feel like would have been so much more interesting than, oh, big space god eats planets. Alas, that's not what we got.
The really cool thing with Galactus, because the smaller audiences might not know, within the MCU, we're in the multiverse saga, and the multiverse has been tapped in the comics and other forms of media, and now we're seeing it in the films. In the comics, throughout all the history of the multiverse, there is only one Galactus. Galactus does not exist in every universe. So I think it's a neat kind of segue, because the audience might not know that there's only one Galactus, and this Galactus can hop universes. He's been satiating his appetite with these planets all across different universes as well. So I think I don't want to say I'm rationalizing and understanding Galactus's perspective, but going through this, if it was me, I wouldn't want to be doing that for millions and billions of years.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think that if they kind of played into it a little bit more and made him more sympathetic, then yeah, I think the audience would kind of also see, could you imagine being forced to do something you don't really want to do for millions of years, and then you have a way out, but this way out is obviously less than ethical. So that creates not only a dilemma for the Fantastic Four, but also a dilemma for our villain, where, it's something like that. But as I said, I think that was a little bit of a missed opportunity. I think they could have made Galactus a little bit more interesting there. But anyway, we have the Fantastic Four back at the Baxter Building. They're obviously watching the news. Everybody's, basically shit talking them and everything like that. I thought that this was an interesting dichotomy of how the opening scene, they're celebrated so much, and how like one thing can just have the public switch on you, which I thought was so interesting, because I'm sure in the Fantastic Four's mind, they're like, man, after everything we've done for them for 4 years, it's like, we don't want to kill our son, and then everybody like turns us into social pariahs, basically. This was the part where they had the CGI baby for some reason, so I don't know if this was a reshoot, but the CGI baby was very uncanny valley, and I did not like it in this scene at all. The group are trying to basically figure out what they need to do next. This is a rare occurrence for Reed Richards, as he's the smartest man in the universe or the earth or whatever, and he does not know what to do. He's trying to figure out, he's completely blindsided. While they were up in space, they had Herbie collect samples of things on the ship. When he went through the samples, it's obviously stuff from millions of years ago that he can't really use as context for anything for their 60s technology or anything in their current time. So they're all kind of out of ideas. They kind of go off to start brainstorming on something that they can use as what they call lever. I took that as like basically saying leverage. So they need to figure out a way that they can leverage the situation in their favor. Johnny is now kind of getting more in depth into this recording of the transmissions and everything. Now that he has one sentence translated that he learned from the Silver Surfer, he says that he's going to basically work and backtrack everything, all the transmissions that they've had, to see if he can find the leverage within everything that she's been saying, I guess, that they've been picking up. From that point, they are once again sitting for presumably another Sunday dinner. And, Reed, this is interesting about his character. he's talking to all of them, and he's basically telling them that he understands the whole Earth's position on everything, that like the facts and everything line up with why they're so angry. This kind of gets Sue upset because he's basically kind of surmising that he's thought about the possibility of giving up Franklin. So she's upset. She runs off to go and see Franklin, who's crying. He follows her and he tries to explain that him being so smart, again, like as I said, perhaps they draw on this whole cursed with knowledge thing. He has to think of all of these terrible things so he can basically figure out a way to stop them from happening. So, of course, he's thought about giving up Franklin, but he said there's no way that he would ever do it. Obviously, Sue says that the way he thinks hurts her. They have this scene where it's kind of a little bit of a division between the two of them, but they end up making up anyway. So this is the scene you were talking about. From there, Sue kind of gets a little fed up. She takes Franklin out in front of the, I've put here, rather peaceful mob, all things considered. They're not destroying the Baxter building. There's no violence or anything. It's just kind of a group of people that are just like making noise outside their house. So, could have been a lot worse. And she sits in front of everybody, and again, the cameras show to the world what she's about to say. She introduces the world officially to Franklin. She has a very beautiful speech about the Earth being their family, and I thought was very well done with this whole family dynamic that they have, just not with the four, but how their relations with the whole world and them having world peace is. She goes on to say that she won't sacrifice the world for her son, but won't sacrifice the son for her world. And she basically, as you said, just drums up a lot of hope within all the people that are listening. She says that if we really stick together and try and think of a way out, there's a way that we can figure this out. And then at this point on, like, they kind of just forgive the Fantastic Four after she says that. In her speech, she mentions about moving the heavens and the earth. And then Reed gets the bright idea, why don't we just take the earth and push it somewhere else? So he goes and says, well, I've been coming up with this bridge idea that's, still a prototype. But what if we just create very large bridges on like every country in the world, and we take the Earth and basically just transport it to another universe or somewhere else so Galactus could never find us. At this point now, we get yet another montage of everybody kind of doing their part because of the whole world peace thing. Everybody's chipping in to make these bridges. The more tests that he's doing, he realizes that you would need an immense amount of power. So the whole world kind of agrees to go into a little bit of like a curfew, and everybody's preserving electricity and everything like that. We also see that Johnny's work with the language finally pays off after, I guess, maybe a month or so. They don't really say how long this whole sequence was. He's ready to go and tell the group everything that he's figured out, but at this time they're ready to start the launch of moving the Earth, basically. So they're getting coordinated with all the people of the Earth. They start setting everything off. They have a countdown counter, and the Silver Surfer comes in and starts destroying all of the bridges except for the one in New York. And so their plans are up in smoke once again. But this time Johnny goes out to her, meets her at the New York bridge, and starts playing her language on all of the televisions and everything so she can hear. They have a little bit of a conversation in her language, and he goes on to basically say he knows a lot about her now and learn that she's from a world. She's a scientist, and Galactus came and she offered herself up to be his herald in return for him not taking her world to save probably her family as well. Now, once again, I'm going to defer to you. Why does Galactus need a herald? If his whole deal is, I don't really care about these people, and I just need to eat these planets, is it explained in the comics why he needs somebody to go and warn the planet before he eats them? Why doesn't he just show up and eat the planet?
I understand your point about why does Galactus even need a herald for? Like, can't he just land on the planet and nom nom nom? Like, it's not like anyone on the planet can put up any resistance against him anyway. And he seems to be doing very well eating planets on his own. But it's essentially, to me, I think of it as, why does an executive have an assistant? They can make phone calls and schedule appointments, but the executive doesn't want to do those things. He has more important things to attend to. So, like the executive, Galactus sends the heralds to find worlds for him. All he has to do is show up and eat. It saves him both time and energy. The heralds just make his life easier and more efficient. I think since Galactus is more of a force of nature than an actively evil being, heralds are his way of saying, I'm coming to eat your planet. Leave. Don't care if you stay. You can't stop me, and it's just more for me to eat, but I'm here for your planet. Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it's to make the process more efficient. A herald seeking planets means Galactus wastes less power searching. His herald finds one and he just goes there directly. It's also why Galactus has a spaceship when he can just teleport there. It saves energy. The heralds take their quests differently. You know, the surfer comes as a warning so people can escape, while, you know, Galactus eventually shows up to make sure nobody escapes and just all. Does that help? Does that kind of give you a breakdown?
Yeah, I
Okay.
understand your point. Yeah, so the guilt of hearing all of these voices of the Earths that she helped destroy basically end up having too much guilt on the Silver Surfer, so she flies off in a huff. Johnny flies after her once again. He says, you know, I'm just trying to protect my world just like you did. And then she basically says the only way around it is to just give up the boy. He says, why don't you just take me instead? And she says, unfortunately, that's not how it works. He says, well, why don't you just stay and help us? Because again, it kind of seems like she also doesn't want to be doing what she's doing. So he's basically saying, just turn on Galactus, help us out. We can beat him. And then she just says, nope, can't do that, and flies off. And we're back to square one with a new plan that the Fantastic Four is going to have to come up with, because this whole bridge thing didn't work out for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we're at the point where Reed builds this crazy plan with these teleportation bridges. Basically, like, you know, we're going to move Earth somewhere else. And just when they're about to pull it off, the Silver Surfer destroys them all except for the one in New York City. And Johnny catches up to her at the last one. And I thought this was a really good scene. He speaks to her in her own language and finds out her story. Her name's Shala Ball, and she only agreed to work for Galactus to save her planet, but she's been stuck listening to the death of every world she's led him to since. It's a really heavy moment, and honestly, I wish the movie slowed down here. There are some really good emotional beats, but the whole thing moves so fast that you barely have time to feel them.
Yeah, I feel like this, I guess you could say, yeah, we're definitely in the third act now. The whole third act just seemed very quick. Because even when I was taking my notes, I'm going through each scene of the movie and everything so that we could, you know, highlight each thing. Yeah, after each plot point, you know, because obviously this movie relies a lot on montages and like voiceovers of, you know, newscasters and stuff. I felt like this was, as you said, very rushed. They didn't let it, you know, sit for a second. But my next question to you is, and I think I asked you this in the movies, I didn't understand for how smart Reed Richards is. I don't see the correlation between what he did with this egg and what he was planning on doing. Because from what I can understand, he had two bridges basically in the lab, you see. He puts the egg in one bridge and then the egg appears at the other bridge. Makes sense, you know, teleportation, sci-fi, I can get behind that. But then now he's suggesting that they make a bunch of bridges all in one spot, and then somehow that's going to be able to move the Earth somewhere. But to my knowledge, or at least what they set up in like earlier on, is that there needs to be another bridge elsewhere for the Earth to go to. So I just thought this whole plan from when they began this whole montage, I was like, well, this isn't going to make any sense. What's going to happen? Is the Earth just going to, you know, move within itself? Like, is it going to create a black hole? Because where was the Earth going to go? He says like, oh, it's just going to go to the far corners of the universe. But how? Like, they don't have a bridge in another universe ready to move the Earth. So I don't know if you felt that way about this plan, but even the Silver Surfer ends up like screwing it up anyway, so we don't see what would have happened. But I didn't see the logic behind this plan for, you know, them writing a character who's meant to be that smart. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so within the Marvel universe, Reed Richards is far and away the smartest in the Marvel universe. And I know we touched on it. Another comparison to Superman. You know, you and I talked about what's his name, Mr. Terrific, potentially coming up with a point of action. So from my understanding, with the egg, you know, it's a mundane egg that he's using to demonstrate and test this crucial technology, which is an experimental teleportation bridge thing. And we come to find his intention is to use it to relocate Earth entirely. I think it's using the egg serves as a simple, relatable analogy for Earth. You know, it's demonstrating the principle of the functionality before attempting this monumental task of moving the actual planet. But it does make me wonder, like, why the egg? Why anything else? So as far as that question, that's a mystery to me as well.
Yeah, and why I bring this up is because we find out that, you know, obviously this bridge that's left in New York is used in the final few scenes. So Yeah, I just didn't understand this whole thing. To me, it was a little bit of a plot hole. Anybody who's listening to this, if they know if it's explained in any type of way in the comics or anything, but from what I could tell, at least what they set up in the movie, it was fairly simple. As I said, I can get behind, I can suspend my disbelief for teleportation. You have one bridge here, you have another bridge there. The egg goes from this bridge to that bridge. But they weren't setting up that if you put a bunch of bridges together in one spot, that'll somehow just move it somewhere. You know what I mean? So that was my only thing where I was like, I thought that was a little weird. And maybe this was, as you said, like because it was so rushed, maybe the writers just needed a quick solve for something and they just wrote it in that way. So yeah, I felt like these were the things that took me out of the movie when I was watching it.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Fantastic's expertise in the comics is largely, physics, engineering, multidimensional science, a little bit of biology, but he's very visionary and experimental. He's constantly pushing into that unknown space. But yeah, he is considered the smartest human in the Marvel universe.
Right. I feel like even a throwaway line, even though it would have been lazy, is that if he says that he's been setting in the beginning part when he's showing Johnny the egg and everything, is like, oh, like I've been setting up these bridges randomly, like I've just been sending them out into the universe, I would have been completely fine with that. So it's like at least it makes sense that the bridges on this earth are going elsewhere. I would have been fine, but they don't say that. So because this plan did not work, back at the Baxter building, Johnny comes back in after talking to the Silver Surfer. The rest of the group commends him for everything he did because obviously he just basically saved Franklin's life just then. After some discussion, Reed basically suggests that what they need to do is bring Galactus here, and then they'll open up the final bridge that they have in New York and just send him somewhere. Again, doesn't really make any sense because there's no bridge anywhere else, but that's their plan. And then Ben's like, well, how are we going to bring Galactus here? Like, it doesn't make any sense. I like this scene because the previous time that he and Sue kind of got into it a little bit, he kind of learned from it, which I liked. He here clearly already has thought of what they need to do, but he plays it off like, oh, well, I don't know what we're going to do, until Sue kind of goes, like, cuts through him being coy and says, yes, you've already thought of it. Basically, he's suggesting that they use Franklin as bait and then, not to sacrifice him, but to use him as bait, and then they take him away and then send Galactus off. This obviously makes the rest of the Fantastic Four very upset, not just Sue. Sue, turns invisible and like goes off. She takes Franklin on a walk. They meet up again and they talk about it, and reluctantly everybody in the group basically ends up agreeing to do this. They start to move forward with this plan. They're outside trying to configure how this is going to work. Ben makes a good point that, well, Galactus is so huge, obviously even him stepping towards the bridge is going to knock down several buildings and kill many people. So Sue calls in a favor with the Mole Man, who we already established she has a good relationship with. He has like an under the city type of world called Subterranea, and he agrees because of Sue asking him that the whole of New York can evacuate underground and stay there safely while the Fantastic Four deal with Galactus above ground.
We're at the big finale in New York. They come up with this plan to use Franklin to bait Galactus into the last portal, while Mole Man, helps clear out the city. I liked the thing with the beard. I hope they keep that.
Yeah, he does look a lot better. Yeah, the thing ends up growing a bit of a beard, and he just keeps it for the rest of the movie. Yeah, hopefully he keeps it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, they're at a whole segue where they have to initially conserve power to move the Earth, and in doing so, the thing is growing rocky stubble, which turns into this beard, and then in an attempt to shave, the power cuts out, so he doesn't shave, and then Johnny makes a comment. He's like, hey, you should keep the beard, and so he does. And I like it.
It looks good. Yeah, I like it a lot better than clean shaven for sure. But yeah, as you said, we're getting basically to the end of the movie almost. Like, this movie being an hour 55, it kind of flew by. The next scene we have, everything is now set up. Galactus arrives. He's obviously, as you said, he can manipulate his size, so he shrunk down so he can actually get into the planet. He's still very big, like maybe you'd say like a little bigger than like a building or something. He goes down, he uses his scanning powers and like basically looks around and sees that they've left Franklin in this, like, I guess you could say like a carriage, but Reed has created this carriage and it's supposed to be protecting Franklin from any harm. So yeah, he scans through it, sees that the baby's over there, so he heads towards the baby. Their plan is to basically distract Galactus. Johnny like blinds him temporarily with the fire and everything. And while he's distracted, not looking, they switch out Franklin with another carriage, the exact same looking one, take him to the Baxter building. Their hope is that, I guess, Galactus is an idiot and doesn't use his X-ray vision to see that the baby's gone, and their hope is that he'll just take, or at least reach for that one, and then when he goes into reach, they'll send him off into another universe. Yeah, Galactus is in fact not an idiot. As he's about to go and reach for the carriage, he looks up again and scans and sees that the baby is in the Baxter building, and he just goes, okay, I'm just going to go over there now. So now their plan once again is up in smoke. They kind of have to pivot everything. So you see the Fantastic Four trying their best to fight him off. Obviously, he's this giant being with cosmic powers, so these guys aren't really a match for him. There's a scene of, he flings Ben off into space. Johnny has to go back down and go up and save him, bring him back down. Reed gets completely like stretched out. In this scene, I've written here, I really don't think that the stretching powers translates well into live action, because people gave the other films a lot of crap for like how bad the stretching looks. I wasn't particularly, impressed with the stretching powers in this movie. It also looked very Uncanny Valley to me. And the CGI was a little wonky here as well. But Sue, at this point, now Galactus has gone in and like just grabbed Franklin from the Baxter building, and Sue kind of goes into mama bear mode. Her instincts just kick in, and she's basically using up all of the cosmic energy that she has with her force field and is pushing Galactus into where the bridge is. Obviously, they tell her to stop because it's draining all of her power, like she's gonna die, but she's decided to do it. She ends up pushing Galactus over to the bridge. They turn it on. Reed swings in, grabs Franklin, and they think everything's done. But nope, Galactus comes back out and is trying to go back and get Franklin. Johnny is prepared to once again sacrifice himself, is going to fly in and just knock Galactus right in. But before he can do that, the Silver Surfer swoops in, knocks him out the way, flies straight into Galactus's face, and both of them just disappear into wherever the bridge took them, even though I don't know how that worked. And then, after that, they think everything is all good, but they look back at Sue. She's on the ground. It's that scene where in a lot of movies where you think like somebody's dead. It happened in the first Avengers movie with Iron Man when he fell down from the wormhole, and then they end up reviving them. But in this movie, a little bit different. They can't revive her. They try to resuscitate her. You CPR. She's dead. I've talked to a few people about this scene. It touched a lot of people, and a lot of people felt a great amount of emotion because, like the score and everything, and you feel that this family actually lost something. It didn't work for me, just because I know that she's going to be in Avengers Doomsday. So it's kind of like how I felt when Infinity War happened, and then they immediately just announced, oh, well, there's going to be a Spider-Man movie next year. So I'm like, oh, so he's not dead. Why should I worry? I don't love when Marvel does something like this, where it's like you don't get to really feel a sense of dread for the characters in the current movie you're watching because they're too busy setting up a movie from down the line.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I think I don't care for when studios in general do that. But going back to the roots of the finale, this is kind of where, of course, it all goes wrong. Galactus takes the baby. Sue throws everything she has at him. Reed manages to grab Franklin back, and she's literally burning herself out, holding him in a force field. And then, from a different character standpoint, Johnny getting ready to sacrifice himself. I thought that was a really cool moment. He was getting ready to shove Galactus through the portal, but like you said, at the last second, Shalabal steps in and takes his place, pushes him in and saves the planet. It works, but Sue dies in the process until Franklin's powers bring her back. And I understand the connection that people have because, a child losing a mother is never a good thing. It's a very deep, powerful moment. But I kind of agree. Like we knew she was coming back when Marvel did their whole announcement for Doomsday. They had this like 5-hour stream of chairs going down the line, and Vanessa Kirby was like the second or third chair. Like you knew she was coming back. You knew all the material. Like no matter what, it was gonna happen. So when she dies, it's kind of like, okay, like there's got to be some explanation as to how she comes back. And then we find that Franklin's powers bring her back. I know you were a tad curious about Franklin's powers. And so I actually went to Wikipedia because I know a little bit about him, but I don't know too much. But so his list of abilities here is rather deep. He has reality warping, matter and energy manipulation, energy projection, psionic abilities such as telekinesis, telepathy, astral projection, and precognition, along with here's the big three: teleportation, immortality, and pocket universe creation. So
Somebody call Lex Luthor.
yeah, really. One thing that Wikipedia says here that not to cite Wikipedia, but I don't recall this being a thing, but it says here that Franklin restricts the use of his powers to once a year in order to give himself a normal, healthy childhood. Because according to this, he has powers beyond most Omega level mutants. Which, reading that list off, that makes sense.
Well, to quote the late Hulk Hogan, let me tell you something, brother. I don't like when comic book characters have these kind of power sets. I was very upset, and you know this, and I told a lot of people about this. I was very upset with the whole Wanda thing. The things that happen at the end of Agatha all along, I might be in the minority, but just the sheer fact that he, as you said, he revives Sue Storm. What's the problem going to be going forward? In the next movie, if anybody dies, what's stopping Franklin from just reviving them? They'll have to explain that to me. There's no rules. He can just do whatever he wants. He's a god. What's the problem? I don't see any stakes anymore now.
So it's funny. It's funny you mentioned Wanda. So I've seen, and you kind of forgot an element in the middle there, which I'll kind of touch on. So I actually haven't seen Agatha all along. I've read everything I need to know, but between that and WandaVision, we have Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I know you didn't care for it too much as a film. I've actually kind of come around to it. I kind of like it. It seems popular to rag on it, which makes sense as it was released at a pretty bumpy time for the MCU, but I think that movie has aged kind of well. It has a really unique feel compared to other releases in the genre with fun twists and expectation subverting moments. It's not without its faults, but it's rather fun. But Wanda was the main villain of that film, and her powers in that scale, like I will say, her as a villain was a good character. Her abilities were a little over the top. La John Krasinski, Mr. Fantastic, going full blown spaghetti man. And what mouth? I mean, that's kind of the same power level that Franklin Richards has, which I agree with. I'm not one for the all powerful individual, but I'm curious to see how they will handle it going forward. In the final scene of the film, we can touch on in a little bit. I've actually read around a little bit, and I have theories for what his character is going to entail. But yeah, as far as overall ability of the character, yeah, I'm not a fan of the all-powerful, unless you're Batman with prep time.
I'm curious as to how they're going to write around this, because I feel like that is going to be a little bit of a cop-out, but I digress. So he brings Sue back to life. Obviously, the rest of the Fantastic Four are very relieved. They embrace. We cut to yet another Ted Gilbert show. I thought this was a pretty funny running joke. I don't know if they intended on it, but it doesn't ever seem like Ted Gilbert actually gets to have them on the show. It's like he's always setting up for them, and then they have to run off and do something, which I thought was pretty funny. So yeah, we cut back to the Ted Gilbert show now. Like obviously the world is now safe, and they come out from underground and everything, and they're celebrating them once again. He's trying to pitch the idea of having the Fantastic Five, and he gives them the little baby thing for Franklin to be in. And obviously Reed and Sue don't go for any of that. When they're literally about to get called onto the stage, they're like counting down to go out there. Their watches go off for another, whatever is going on. They immediately ditch the talk show and they run out to the Fantastic Car. They have a scene where all the guys are trying to figure out a way to get the seat into the car seat in. I thought it was funny, but I think it went on a beat too long. They eventually click the car seat in, and Reed says, "All right, we're ready," and they fly off to whatever it was that was calling them on their watch, and that's it. It cuts to the credits. I've written in this that it very much reminded me of the end of The Incredibles 2, and as I'm learning more about the Fantastic Four myself, I am so amazed at how many things The Incredibles pulled from them. From the 60s feel in the beginning of The Incredibles, the blue suit Mr. Incredible starts with, just the four people in the family, obviously, the Underminer and the Mole Man. When I was a kid, obviously I didn't know about the Fantastic Four, but like now looking back on it, like it was this whole thing that Pixar pulled from them. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, that's the end of the movie.
It wraps up with the team finally celebrated as heroes. Galactus is gone. Everything's looking good until the stinger.
Yep, that's right. So yeah, this movie has two post-credit scenes. The mid-credit one is the one that everybody should stick around for sure. In this mid-credit scene, we're cutting to 4 years again into the future. I've heard some people speculate that the Fantastic Four get their powers like they did on their initial comic debut, which is 1961. So the movie takes place in 1965, 4 years later. And then now this post-credit scene, they're speculating, is 1969, 4 years after that. So we see that now, obviously, Franklin is around 4 years old. He's grown up. We have a different actor for it, not CGI. Thank God, it's an actual kid. And we're in the Baxter building. It looks a little bit different, obviously, since 4 years has passed. They kind of changed some stuff around a little. He's on the couch reading a book with his mom, Sue Storm. Sue says, like, oh, I'm going to go get him another book. Like, he's talking to Herbie, like, oh, where's that book he likes and everything like that. She goes over to find it. She comes back to him and she hears like something going on. She immediately gets on guard and like starts to, put out like a force field or something. She looks over I guess you could say the mantle. And then we see Franklin Richards looking up at a man in a green cloak and he's holding a metal mask. We don't see this person's face, but yes, Dr. Doom is there in the Baxter building. And I guess he's talking to Franklin. There's no dialogue. It just shows that Franklin and him are interacting in some degree. And then it cuts to a screen that says the Fantastic Four will be in Avengers Doomsday. What were your thoughts on this post-credit scene? I've heard from a few people that they were actually a little underwhelmed by this post-credit scene. So what were your thoughts?
I guess I'll ask my question after I give my thoughts. So 4 years later, Sue is reading to Franklin at the Baxter building. She steps out of the room, and when she comes back, this is what I could appreciate. There's a figure in a green cloak holding a mask, just standing there talking to Franklin. They don't say a word. You already know who it is. What issue did people have with it?
The consensus that I've heard is that they felt like Robert Downey Jr. was probably not even there. Like they just got like a random person on the day to just do it or whatever. This scene was reportedly directed by the Russos. So I'm assuming it was on the set of Doomsday. So I think it would be RDJ. They don't show his face probably just to preserve the big reveal in that movie. But yeah, a lot of people just felt like there was no dialogue in it. I guess maybe it's just probably their own expectations more so, but they weren't really critiquing it anyway, like not saying it was bad. But I guess maybe in their head, I think most people assumed that there would have to be a Doom cameo at the end of the movie or in one of the credits. But maybe in their heads, they just thought it was going to be a lot more. Like it's going to be a longer scene. We were going to see Robert Downey Jr. maybe. They don't really like say anything other than that. But some people were like let down by it. So
yeah, I see both sides. I knew going in that in some way, shape, or form, Doom was going to have to be mentioned. And I mean, we even see the teases for Latveria throughout the film. But I think expecting to see RDJ is a bit too much because not to go too logistical here. If you put RDJ in a movie, you're going to have to pay him for that appearance. And supposedly his contract as Doom is just for Doomsday and Secret Wars, the next two Avengers films. So I was never expecting to see RDJ in, like, visually if they went that route. But so this kind of taps into the theory that I had read. So I think Doomsday is going to delve into a little bit of origin between Pedro Pascal's Reed Richards and RDJ's Doctor Doom, because I think this scene really shows that Doctor Doom is from that universe, not from a different universe branching out or anything. But so the one thing that I've read that makes sense for them to do is, and I'm not necessarily a fan of them doing it because it's a big part of the character, but many are speculating that the reason Franklin is touching and holding his hand up to Dr. Doom's face is he's healing it, which would allow for us to actually see Robert Downey Jr. Because I think a large part of his casting, like I don't think he would have done it. I don't think Disney and Marvel would have paid him all that dough just to be a face behind a mask. So that's one thing that I've kind of heard that would make sense to me as to what Franklin is doing. So we can actually see RDJ in the next couple movies.
This scene, I don't want to say it disappointed me. We watched it in like a theater where the audience was applauding and everything. You and I didn't think that the
Where
movie
was
needed
that
all
for
of that.
Superman?
You and I said the same thing. I mean, we were in a theater like when we watched Superman, like some people started to try and clap, but I guess like now maybe people think it's awkward to do that. But nope, the Marvel fans in this movie, when we watched it, were clapping and having a grand old time. And I mean, it makes things a lot more fun. But yeah, in this scene, the post credit, there was like a little bit of an oh shit type of feeling in the theater. People, you heard the murmurs and everything. Yeah, I think the scene was serviceable. Like, would I have liked to see a little bit more or hear like some dialogue? Sure, but you don't need it. Like as you said, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, I was underwhelmed. I also like you figured that with Doomsday being the next movie, well, now it's moved, so Spider-Man's the next movie, but being the next Avengers movie, Doom would have to be in. There's just no way that like they just go without even mentioning Doom something. So is that? Are you saying that that is also your theory, that that's what you think is going on, or do you not really have a theory as to where they go in the next movie?
I honestly have no clue what they're gonna do, because with this film originally set to be the Kang Dynasty, who knows what they're gonna do? Like we all know it's gonna build to Secret Wars, which I don't know if they're gonna adapt the first Secret Wars, the second Secret Wars, a hybrid of the two. That's the complication behind the comics. There's a whole hodgepodge there. So I don't know what they're gonna do. But I think Doomsday is largely gonna be revolving around Doom having Franklin. He's doing something with him. And then eventually the Fantastic Four come to find the Avengers, and then, you know, the new Avengers slash Thunderbolts get involved, and then it's, you know, everybody against Doctor Doom. Whether that leads to, one can assume that'll lead to the creation of Battle World, which is in Secret Wars. But I think they've kind of opened a toy box and they can kind of write themselves into whatever they want for Doomsday.
Yeah, my thought is the same. I think that obviously in that scene, we're seeing Doom pulling up, and I think he's going to end up taking Franklin. I like this idea of Marvel introducing characters in different Earths, and we just get to see whatever's going on in their story on their Earth alone. It's not in 616. I think that they could, since they introduced the multiverse saga, they could have done this with a few other projects. I think honestly, Shang-Chi, because we haven't seen him in such a long time, it could have been explained away if his was happening on a parallel Earth. Moon Knight as well. Certain characters that they've just introduced that don't seem to be playing into anything or have been gone, not mentioned for a long time. I feel like they could have also happened on alternate Earths like this. But yeah, I think that my big concern with everything is not only that they don't have a finished script yet and they've started shooting, but I think that their whole plan is very much based on nostalgia again. I think that their pivot from the whole Kang thing and making RDJ Doom, I was not too happy about that. But my worry is that we have Fantastic Four here. This is the first time we've seen the MCU Doctor Doom. And then the next movie we're going to see him in is Doomsday. So either Doomsday is going to have to be a 3-hour long movie to jam pack everything they have to do. Because mind you, remember, Thunderbolt sets up that there's a new Avengers. Then also they set up that Sam is making his own Avengers. We don't see that happening, so I guess maybe they're just going to have that happen off camera. Then we also have all of the X-Men that they show on the chairs when they announce the cast. And then, yeah, as you said, the Fantastic Four as well just jump straight from this into this whole team up thing. I feel like it's far too rushed. Like when I saw this movie and I saw Doom, I thought this would have been like a perfect movie for the beginning of Phase 4. I think like this being a tease of Doom coming, like Thanos at the end of the first Avengers, just that little tease of him so that you know the audience kind of knows where we're going. I don't know what happened with Marvel. I know that they had to pivot with the Kang thing, but this movie would have been much better having been in an earlier phase. We have everything else that happened in the multiverse saga, sure. Maybe even have another Fantastic Four movie so we can spend more time with these characters. But I'm concerned that everything's going to be too rushed in Doomsday, that they're going to have to do too much exposition. Doctor Doom's backstory, his relationship with Reed Richards, all these teams that are getting together. I think it's going to be a mess. That's always been my concern. What do you think?
So it's funny we're having this conversation because it was about this time last year when when RDJ was announced to be Doctor Doom, because it was at San Diego Comic-Con last year. And I remember you and I we were watching Deadpool and Wolverine in theaters.
That's
And
right.
it was after that we checked social media and it was like, oh, holy shit, RDJ's playing Doom. I think since they pivoted away from Kang, I think really since, let's just say Deadpool and Wolverine to make it easy. I think from then, well, no. Let's just say No Way Home. From No Way Home on, a lot of it has been nostalgia based to kind of bring back the fans in twofold, just really just get their investment. And I don't think Doomsday is going to be 3 hours. I think it'll be 2.5. Secret Wars, I think, will be 3 hours because they're going to want to cram in every little thing they can. Because I mean, that's essentially the upcoming, Infinity War and Endgame. Those films were similar lengths. I think my worry is the same as yours because they're going to try and cram everything in. And then, from everything I've read, they're essentially going to soft reboot afterward, because apparently they're making a new X-Men movie, which I'm all for. But I think after Secret Wars, Marvel needs to kind of like take their foot off the gas and just kind of align where they want to go going forward. Because it just seems like they're trying to pigeonhole themselves into a fit a square peg into a round hole and see what they can fit.
Watch it, and I'm sure that movie's going to make $1 billion. It could be the worst piece of crap movie, and it's probably going to make a lot of money just because it's an Avengers movie. We're going to have Sir Patrick Stewart back, and we're going to have Sir Ian McKellen back, and all these James Marsden as Cyclops. Everybody's going to be back, so it could literally be like no writing in the movie, and it's probably going to make a lot of money, and that's all Disney cares about, which is a problem to me. Money is good for the movie and everything, but I wholeheartedly really like the storytelling much more, as I'm sure many people are. But yeah, those are honestly my final thoughts on this mid-credit scene, and then my thoughts for the prediction of what's going to happen. I just think Doom's going to be taking Franklin, obviously, to manipulate his power, and then we're going to find out that he wins in some way in Doomsday, manipulates Franklin's power to create this battle world, like you said, and I think that's where they reboot. So I think that's basically where they're going. The actual post-credit scene was just a little throwaway thing, like a cartoon version of the Fantastic Four within their universe that people there watch, and that's all it was, like just the opening credits for that. And it gave a nice little thank you to Jack Kirby, which I liked. His birthday is August 28th, which is where they get the Earth 828, which I liked as well. You have any other thoughts before we get into our ratings or anything like that?
No, not really.
All right. Well, at the time of us recording this movie currently has a Rotten Tomatoes critic score of 88 and a 93 fan score, both higher than Superman, mind you. And I believe one more point than the Thunderbolts on the fan score, but the same critic score, 88. And on Letterboxd, it's at a 3.7 out of 5. I ended up giving this 3.5 stars out of 5.
I'm in the same boat. I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. For me, it's, as we mentioned previously, it's very, very close to Thunderbolts. I gave both Fantastic and Thunderbolts a 3.5 stars out of 5. I slightly lean Fantastic Four as a film, but for me, so I have it in front of me. Just as a reference, from my comic book movie rankings, I have Fantastic Four just ahead of Thunderbolts. I have it just behind Shang-Chi.
And that's interesting. I'd have to rewatch Shang-Chi. I really liked it. I think that, like, from what I recall in Phase 4, I think that might have been my favorite of the Phase 4 movies. I'd have to go back and see exactly, because Phase 4 was kind of long from what I recall. I'd have to go back and see exactly what counts as Phase 4 and what doesn't, but I enjoyed Shang-Chi as well.
Yeah, Phase 4 was long. I think, I almost contradicted myself because I was thinking another film was in Phase 4, but it's not. I think my favorite, just looking at it, probably No Way Home. Probably.
Fair enough. I enjoyed the theater experience of No Way Home, but then when I left the theater and I started thinking about, like, the plot. In another podcast, we can go over that movie.
While I do have it up, not to go too far aside, but fun fact, the top 5 in my comic book movie rankings all time, none of the top 5 are MCU movies.
May I ask what they are then? All three out of the 5 Dark Knight trilogy?
No.
Okay.
So I'll go 5-1.
Okay, hold on. Actually, let's make a game of this. Let me guess, if I may. The Dark Knight's in there.
Correct.
Logan is in there.
Correct.
The Batman.
Correct.
Oof. And then both the Spider-Verse movies.
You're correct.
There you go, baby.
So yeah, in order from I'll go 1 to 5. The best is The Dark Knight, and then Into the Spider-Verse, and then Across the Spider-Verse, and then Logan, and then the Batman. And then
Very fair. Very good.
just outside at number 6 is Avengers Endgame.
All very fair. Yeah, definitely some good. I mean, for the last almost 20 years, we've been eating very well as comic book fans. Like, we can't complain. So I don't agree with the whole comic book or superhero fatigue, whatever they called it. I agree with James Gunn. I think people are fatigued of like lazy writing and like bad filmmaking. That's all it is. Like, I think if you make a good movie, people enjoy it. As you saw, like look at what happened this month. Like, Jurassic World has made the most money out of the 3 big blockbusters and is the worst movie objectively out of the 3.
Easily.
But, you know, that's all studios seem to care about. Yeah, easily. And yeah, this movie, I enjoyed it. It was a good movie going experience, but as I said, I liked it, but didn't love it. Nothing crazy. Not going to be running to rewatch it. Not a classic in my mind. Whereas I just feel so much more excited for what Superman has coming. This movie has me more worried about what's coming than more excited. So yeah. Any other thoughts before we sign off?
Yeah, I think to close out for me, just kind of going over the movie in a nutshell, there's so much good stuff here. The cast is great. The look of the movie is really cool. The score is incredible, but it just never lets you breathe. You don't get enough time to connect with anyone, which is a shame because this is the first time we've gotten a Fantastic Four movie that works. I had fun with it, but man, it really could have been something more. It was almost fantastic.
Yeah, I can't say it was a fantastic movie, unfortunately, but yeah, there were fantastic elements. I'm thinking that either we do another poll for next week or we just go ahead and watch together. I think that might be the big movie coming out next week, if I'm not mistaken. Oh no, that's not. So Weapons comes out next weekend, and then Together comes out in the week. So we'll have to discuss how we're gonna do that, I think.
So Weapons comes out August 8th. So that's not
I
this
thought it was
coming
the
week, but the
second.
following
Okay, so
week.
we have some time. Oh, okay, so then we should be good.
Not to give it away, I was thinking if we want to do a poll, I would say either Together or The Naked Gun.
Naked Gun. Yeah. I'm not excited for that Naked Gun movie because just from the trailers, I don't think Liam Neeson is doing the part of Drebin very well. I think it's a miscast, but if the fans want us to review it, we'll review it. So we'll see what they say. I know what I'll be voting for is as I'll put it that way, but
as do I.
Yeah.
But all right.
But yeah, you have anything else to say before we sign off?
No, I'm all good. I hope everybody enjoyed hearing our thoughts on the episode and the film, and we'll have a fantastic weekend.
Yep. We'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.